Well, welcome everyone. I am Jane McCleary from the Blanchard River Watershed Partnership, and we've been working very closely with a lot of organizations in Hancock County to start thinking about installing prairies on properties that could, flood mitigation properties, so that they're so beneficial for the environment. And Mark Bonneter over here, he's actually one of my former students. As we're sitting here, he was teaching me how to put a PowerPoint into a PDF. And John King is in back, and he's from the Naturalists, and he's going to be videotaping the presentation. I'm sorry, the Master Gardeners, and he's going to be videotaping the presentation today. So you're welcome to ask questions, not a problem. But don't all talk at the same time. That would be the only thing. My background is I was a reading and science teacher at Corey Rawson for about 15 years. Over 20 years. And then I eventually took a position with the Hancock County Educational Service Center as the Director of Education for Hancock County Schools. And I did that for about 15. So I had 39 years in the field of education. I grew up I joined the Blanchard River Watershed Partnership, which is an organization dedicated to keeping our water clean. So we do things like write grants so that farmers can put in best practices like cover crops, things like that. We help. The grant writing also helps install things like riparian buffers, prairies, education. We do a lot of education to the community about things that they can do to keep our water clean, things they should not do to avoid polluting our water. We have a lot of programs available. We want to start up a nitrate watch and a salt watch where people can go out and test the water for pollutants, and then you report the data to a national database. So we've been in existence since 2006, and we have several of our board members. Mark is one of our board members and a former student of mine. And would our board members stand up? Dick Kozlowski back there.
Is there a penalty?
No,
nobody's still throwing.
Dick, do you want to just tell about yourself a little bit?
Whatever. I'm Dick Kozlowski. I'm a retired engineer. I used to work in the industrial chemicals division of the largest chemical company in the world. And we had a few discharge permits into the Ohio River that I had a small amount to do with, so I'm here to help keep the Blanchard clean.
He's also our treasurer and my go-to guy for advice, so I think he's a real blessing. Bob Konar is our secretary.
I'm a founding member of the board of the Watershed Partnership. I'm current secretary, past president, and I've been teaching biology at Owens Community College for 26 years.
And then, as I said, Mark is also a board member. Do we have any other questions here? Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. Tim Brueggemann is also, he's one of our, is kind of in the back, in the middle. He was not, he's not on the board presently, but he is the retired director of the Park District. And he was a founding member and a president for many years of the Watershed Partnership. So I'd also like to introduce Kelsey Moore. So Kelsey, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Kelsey Moore. I work for Wild Toledo at Toledo Zoo, so we will be helping with the potential prairie installation here in the city of Findlay. So if you have any questions, just let me know.
And you're welcome to get up and get something to eat. I do have some munchie because I know it's right around the dinner hour, so you might like something to eat. And if you have questions, feel free to ask questions of Kelsey or myself. Even Tim, he's been very helpful on this project. Actually, I don't know what we would do without Tim and all his wealth of knowledge that he's bringing to the project. So Mark will go to the first slide. The idea for this project just kind of came up with community members. We have a lot of flood mitigation land, and something needs to be done to help stop the flooding. Prairies can actually help with that process. And so we have kind of reached out to people who would like to get involved in the project, and so you can see who those folks are. Once we get grant funding for Prairie installation, We also are collaborating with Red Tornado Collective, Marketing Collective, because they can help us prepare educational materials, signage for the Prairie. People can bring their children to the prairies and walk through it and learn about prairie and plants and the benefits. We investigated who's the best people to do it, and through our research we found that Wild Toledo team has installed many prairies. So we started talking to Dr. Ryan Walsh, who's over there on the far, that would be your left, and then he's the plant conservation director of Wild Toledo. Kelsey, she kind of does the installation, and then Jody Anderson is the education director of the zoo. Wild Toledo has lots of experience doing this, so you can see wherever you see these locators, those are projects that they have done over the years. And the website, if you'd like to learn and see where all those projects are, you can go to their website or just put in Wild Toledo and it'll come up and explore their pages. So they have a lot of experience doing this. So we wanted to find out, let's learn more about prairies. So with Tim's help and Jane Riker's help, she's the president of the Naturalists, we found a group of people who are interested in learning more about prairies. We got a team together and we went to Chamberlain Hill Intermediate School to look at their prairie that their students helped install. And Wild Toledo worked with them as well. We took a trip up to Toledo, and you wouldn't think a zoo and prairies, you just don't, for me personally, I didn't put that together. But they actually have installed a prairie right behind the zoo. So you can drive up there and take a look at their prairie. It's in a residential neighborhood. The people seem to enjoy the plants when they're blooming in the summer. And then we also visited hospice in Northwest Ohio. But we went to Chamberlain Hill School, and then Glenwood Middle School also has prairie plants. And in fact, the flowers on that table over there are from Glenwood Middle School Prairie. Now right now, we don't have the variety of plants because autumn's setting in, but normally you would see just a multitude of colors. They're quite stunning when they're in bloom. The most beautiful time is probably June, July, and early August when they're just stunning. Teachers do take their students at Chamberlain actually did help with the planting. Toledo Zoo provides signage. And this, if you go down Western Avenue, this is the Prairie Garden from a distance, so it's kind of like right behind the school. And then over here, there are tables and chairs where people can kind of just sit and enjoy the beauty of the prairie. Kelsey, is there anything you want to add about Chamberlain Hill School Prairie?
Yes, that Prairie specifically was funded by a grant partnership that we have with Owens Corning. So they've been able to fund 50 installations at schools over the last 5 years. Next year will be our last year of the grant. So Chamberlain Hill is one of the, I believe we're up to 120 native installations all over the area. But Chamberlain Hill, along with all the other schools that we get to work with, is an excellent way to get the students involved. They help with the seeding of the prairie and the plugging of the prairie with Head Start plants that we grow at our greenhouse. And it's always great to see the kids get an interactive part of the installation, as well as going out and seeing the prairies in their bloom, and all the insects and pollinators that are out there. So.
Yes.
So many questions. So you have to forgive me if I'm jumping the gun.
It's okay.
But so I'm a resident owner, and I've planted prairie. I call them pocket prairies in my yard.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm interested in creating are gardens that will support pollinators throughout the season.
Sure.
So you have things blooming at all times.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you have suggestions that you can give us on plants that would provide that?
Absolutely, yeah, I'm happy to give specific suggestions, or if you go to our website, wildtoledo.org, we sell over 500 different native species out of our greenhouse that we have on grounds. We just had our fall sale, so that would be our last sale for the year, but we start pre-sale next April 1st. and our usually first sale of the year is going to be end of April. But if you go to the website and you put in like what time you want things to bloom, what colors you're looking for, heights, soil requirements that you have, light requirements that you have, it'll filter all of that out for you and give you plant suggestions. But like your typical throughout the season, so our prairie mix has about 45 different species of wildflowers and grasses. And the seed mix is designed to be blooming throughout the whole year. So in the spring, usually it's in early May, you're going to get your golden Alexanders, which are usually our first blooms of the season, which are actually a larval host plant for the black swallowtails.
Yeah.
Then the majority of the plants are going to bloom throughout June, July, and August. So in the photo there, you can see the bee balm up front. That's the purple flower. You're going to get black-eyed Susans, sunflowers, your lobelias, things like that. Then once you get towards the fall, you're seeing mostly goldenrods and asters, as well as like your tall bone sets and things like that. But if you want specific suggestions, I'm more than happy to.
Yeah, so Rory also has his own apiary, so we have bees in our backyard, and then we have bees in other locations, so that's why I'm also keenly interested in this, because I need to support our honeybees, but also all pollinators. So when we moved into our house in Findlay, it was a void of most insects, and so I've been planting, and I'm seeing now butterflies, and I'm also discovering the beauty at night. And so there are giant silk moths that are absolutely amazing and beautiful, and so I'm just trying to like absorb as much information as I can, so maybe I can just talk a bit more
Absolutely, yeah.
later.
What's that website again?
wildtoledo.org.
Well, thank you for your questions, and thank you
Thanks,
for
yeah, sorry,
putting-
I know I took up a lot of time,
No,
sorry,
no,
thank you.
no, that's what we're here for, to answer questions and provide information. And I appreciate the fact that you are using prairie plants and you have bees and so forth. So I think that's wonderful. We need to have more people like you. Okay, next. This is the Toledo Zoo site, and so you can see some of the flowers that we saw. That's what it looks like. If you were across the street, that's what it would look like. This was back in July. In closer up, you would see more of these flowers, and it's a lot prettier than the pictures showed there, but they do have the signage so people can learn more about it, and that Wild Toledo does that. And again, that's Jody Anderson from the zoo. She had over 1,000 kids going through the zoo programming in the summer, so she's a very busy lady. The Hospice of Northwest Ohio was just stunning. It's in Toledo. They have walkways through the Prairie. When I walked through there, it was so peaceful. I've never felt such peace in my life walking through that Prairie. I lost my husband not too long ago. That's kind of the first times I felt so peaceful. And I'm thinking, oh, those people in hospice must find peace as well, looking at those prairie plants. So if we install prairies, we hope to have walking paths that people can explore and just find peace, but also to learn about prairie plants and the benefits, and maybe they'll want to put their own prairies in like you. I'm a fan. Prairies are great for the environment, but they do absolutely increase diversity. So when we have the prairies, you're going to see all kinds of insects. You're going to see lots of pollinators. Also, wild bees, they attract a tremendous number of birds, little small animals. Is probably for Hancock County and probably over there into Ottawa and Bluffton, because they all face flooding issues. I think there's going to be interest in putting prairies in, because they really do reduce erosion and they hold the water in place. They keep that water so it's not running off the ground into the river. that statistic at the bottom, 1 in every 3 bites of human food is either directly or indirectly the result of a pollinator. So, and we know that our bees are endangered right now, so it's a really serious problem that we're dealing with. And the more people that can put plants in, the better. So basically, a prairie is different than a meadow, because meadow plants die off, and then basically there's succession starts taking place, and eventually shrubs move in, trees move in. But prairies, they are very adaptive to a certain type of soil, and their roots are really, really long, and so they can survive all kinds of dry conditions. Whereas you're like a lawn, it's just going to turn brown. The prairie plants, their roots are so deep they can pull water up from the aquifer, or they can access nutrients. Again, it's obviously they're drought tolerant. They can also, if the soil's not very good, they can tolerate poor soil. So out west, of course, there are lots of prairies because they don't have, around here we have pretty good soil, but we're pretty clayey as well. But out west, those prairies, they can just take over because they don't require the tremendous amount of water and nutrients. And even though Ohio isn't thought of as of a prairie state, we do have quite a few prairies located in Ohio, and I think the next slide shows some of the prairies, I think. Well, not that, it's coming up. But we do have quite a few prairies that you can travel and visit, and you can just go to online and say Ohio prairies. You can find all kinds of places to visit. There's a lot of science behind prairies, so Mark will go to the next slide. And as you can see, the very negative effect of erosion. So it really helps keep our topsoil in place. As the plants die and they decompose, they will create additional layers of soil, and it takes thousands of years to create just a few centimeters of soil, good, healthy soil. So having those plants in place are really important. Again, because they hold the soil in place, you're not going to have the soil ending on rivers and streams. They're also going to hold herbicides and fertilizers, those kinds of things in the ground, and keep those from running off. They are definitely good for agriculture. A lot of farmers are planting them along streams that go across their property, because then again it slows that erosion of their precious topsoil. They don't have as many loss of crops. It just keeps their farmland very rich. And it even helps climate change because, or helps prevent climate change, because it's taking in, as we all know, plants take in carbon dioxide and they release oxygen into the atmosphere. So the more plants we have, the more carbon dioxide that is removed from the atmosphere. One of the sad things is I'm sure you've all heard about the decrease in monarch butterflies. So it's a pretty serious situation. And when I went over to Glenwood Middle School, we had a nice milkweed plant that I saw several milkweed plants that were just getting ready to open up and release seeds. So, Kelsey, do you know how long the prairie's been at Glenwood? Did you help them do their prairie?
No, that one had been installed before I started working, I think, maybe 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a fairly well-established prairie. So there were some that were already popping open, and these seeds were getting ready to be dispersed. So again, our precious honeybees and native bees, their numbers are being decimated by, they don't have places to build their hives. The disease are very prevalent, and so the more we can do to save our pollinators, the better. I think these are your statistics. Were these your statistics? You want to talk about those?
Sure, yeah. We found that typically each prairie increases butterfly diversity 20 to 27 times over turf grass. So one of the ways that we trying to collect some of this data is by using malaise trapping. We do butterfly transects in some of our prairies, as well as bee surveys. So one thing that we could do once we get the prairie installation going is setting up these traps while we're doing the preparation phase of the installation. So where you're not expecting to see much insect activity, many butterflies, because there's not really anything there besides the turf grass. And then just the immediate effect following year, once the prairie has been installed, of just the immense increase in native insect diversity and butterflies. Even in just our first year prairies, where we're typically seeing like black-eyed Susans blooming and purple coneflowers blooming, and we don't have quite the diversity, that takes a little bit of time to get. We see an immediate increase in the number of insects, the butterflies, birds, bees. It's pretty incredible.
Can you just, I think it would be helpful if you could expand upon the native insect diversity. So I think, just my opinion, but as a homeowner, I don't know how well people are aware of the types of insects that are in their backyards that help really support our ecosystem. And so can you just talk a little bit about what those insects are and what kind of plants would be needed to help support them?
Yeah, so the different plants that we have attract different pollinators. So you know, some of our foxgloves, our foxglove beard tongue, our calico beard tongues, they have more tubular flowers, so those are usually better for bees that are kind of able to get in there. I'm sure that I could get Jane some information, some of our insect diversities. I'm not much of an insect expert myself, but of just like the increase in the insects that we see, but the benefit of bringing those insects in, not only does it help with pollination and things like that, but then you're kind of creating this food chain where, you know, the insects provide benefit to the plants and to the surrounding areas, but they're also bringing in birds and things that feed on the insects. So it kind of creates this chain that's very important for an ecosystem.
Oh, question over here.
Another way to help her is the OSU Extension Service, the Master Gardeners Program, has excellent resources online about good bugs and bad bugs, and the plants that will keep the bad bugs away and the plants that invite good bugs to stay. So, and there's many of them for year-round use. So, just seems to be an endless list.
And I actually did become a member of the Naturalists, so.
We just need you as a member of the Master Gardeners now.
Oh, but you have to know so much to be a master gardener.
They'll teach you.
Oh, he's shaking, John's shaking his. By the way, that's John King. Maybe I introduced you, but he is a master gardener. And Elaine Reynolds, our former board member, and she's also president of our organization, is a master gardener as well. So it does take some studying, but this is keeping me busy.
It's an open book test.
Okay, all right, no test, I'm happy.
Are there bad insects that you don't want to attract?
I mean, we do see the spotted lanternflies in the prairie, and that's more so just because they're everywhere right now. So it's not that the prairie's necessarily bringing them in; they're just kind of around. It's possible that we do get some ticks as well. I've been working in the prairies for the Toledo Zoo for 5 years, and I've only had maybe 4 ticks on me. So it's not like I'm seeing them very often, but it is a possibility.
I just hope that the birds would eat, you know, the bad ones.
Yeah.
Well, they're
Yeah, or there's parasitic insects that help with those too. So.
Yeah, and there's.
Well, I just think too, what's important is, I think, you know, when we grow our gardens, we think, oh, the flowers are spent, cut them down. But the echinacea where the flowers have passed, I have goldfinches coming and pulling out the seeds, and you know, the the thistle heads, they're coming to eat them, so we can't cut them down. We have to leave them there for a while. I think that's important, and so just really understanding that chain of events is really important. And then being able to plant to support all of these different ecological needs is also important. So,
Good point. Elaine?
To have a question about bed bugs, we have a pocket prairie in our backyard, and I have noticed that I no longer have Japanese beetles on my roses that are up by the house because I don't know why. I guess the birds are eating them or some other insects eating them, or I haven't had any since our little pocket prairie has been established.
That's
So,
really good
so
news.
the good bugs do show up and take care of the bad bugs.
That's right.
awesome.
Yes, and it's the food chain. I think Kelsey brought up the food chain because plants are our producers. All our energy comes from the sun, but the plants capture the sun's energy, and then that energy is transferred to all the other living organisms on Earth. So they're really important to have because all of the animals that are part of the food chain are going to depend on all these plants that we hope to plant, and you will have in your gardens as well. Mark?
I wanted to add that Tim's comment back there about the OSU resources and the master gardener and the good bad bugs versus bad bugs and pollinator information is available at ohioline.osu.edu. There are hundreds of fact sheets.
Do you want to say that again?
ohioline, all one word, .osu.edu.
Is there stuff in the Beagle on that also?
You can also go to Beagle, which stands for Buckeye Yard and Garden Online, which is bygl.osu.edu.
Okay. You can see that Mark used to work for the Hardin County Extension Agency for quite a number of years. He was also an ag teacher at Liberty Benton. Amazing ag teacher. I had to supervise curriculum for ag science teachers, and he was my go-to guy. I didn't know anything about it, so it was like Mark as my teacher. I was his teacher, and then he became my teacher. Okay. The thing that amazes me most is the length of prairie plant roots. They can be as long as 15 feet. So, I couldn't visualize. I am very bad at visualizing, so I just thought we'd see what 15 feet looks like.
You want me to stand up?
Sure. So this afternoon, I got my rope and I measured it. Now imagine if we could stretch this up like prairie plants, it would go all the way up to the second story. That's how deep those roots are. And then they spread out, so they're not just together like this, but they're fanning out in all directions, taking in nutrients and holding water in place. And we have a soil and water conservation on our board, a guy from there. And one of the projects we're working on with the six soil and water conservation districts in our watershed is a project that educates people about the importance of holding on to water, keeping it in place. So we're going to have signs in all 6 counties that talk about prairies, about riparian buffers, about wetlands, about the watershed. And people can take their children, they can pick up a book from their SWCD, they can pick up a book, has the maps, they can take their families to these sites and learn all about these beneficial projects and answer questions. And once they fill out the booklet, they take it back to the soil and water districts and can pick up a little prize. So it's a nice thing because it becomes educational, but it's also nice for the family. It helps families do something together besides cell phones and television. And getting lots of exercise as well. Okay. Another important part is tremendous amount of savings to cities, to schools, to park districts when they don't have to pay for the labor to mow the lawns. Labor's quite expensive, then you've got the maintenance of the equipment, the time involved for the people in the maintenance departments of the cities, when they could be doing other things that are more important. But they have to spend a lot of time keeping these open lands, especially in Hancock County with all the flood mitigation properties we have. A 5-acre site, I did talk to A.J. Koppas, who's in charge of managing all the maintenance in the city, and he said a 5-acre plot of land costs over $60,000 in 1 year to mow. That's your labor, your gas, your maintenance. And if you multiply that by a number of years, that's a lot of money. It can be up to, if we took all the flood mitigation properties in Hancock County, up to about $480,000 a year. So now we're talking a lot of money that could be saved for taxpayers. Again, it's so much cheaper. It's 9/10 the cost of maintaining a regular piece of land. If you go down East Main's Cross Street and along the river, there's this beautiful manicured lawn with trees. That has to be mowed daily. Not daily, but weekly or whatever to keep it looking nice. If that had prairie plants, you'd have the beauty of the prairie plants and no expense to the taxpayers. Plus it can become an educational site for people. So there's lots of areas all over Hancock County where this could be done. We could really keep Wild Toledo busy. All right, next. Another thing that a lot of farmers are doing is they're planting these strips with prairie plants. And they, again, you can see how deep the roots are. So there's 95% less soil export, 89% less phosphorus getting into our water ecosystems, and 84% less nitrogen that's going into our waters and running off. So it's really maintaining water quality by putting these prairie strips in. My nephew owns 8,000 acres in Sandusky County, so I have to talk to him and see if he does do best practices, but I'll have to see if he does that. Oh, this is another piece of research I did that just amazed me. That this is the flood that we had, our most recent flood that we had in Hancock County, and you can see that if this is a regular lawn, the roots only go that deep. But the deeper Kentucky bluegrass goes a little bit deeper, and then you can see some of the different, the big blue stem, look at the length of those roots. They go down 10 feet. And again, holding that land in place, aerating the soil. That's really important, to aerate the soil. And that way, earthworms can help with that, but prairie plants can do an even better job of it. And then as they decompose, they enrich the soil as well. Carbon dioxide storage. We all know that plants take in carbon dioxide, and as animals, they're giving off carbon dioxide, burning gives off carbon dioxide, lots of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. When things decompose, then again, the prairie plants can help with the decomposition process. And so this shows some of the approximate consumptions per acre per year of the different types of elements and compounds. 7.9 inches per hour, that's pretty significant. It also helps with the nitrogen cycle. I'm always fascinated because a lot of the prairie plants have nitrogen fixing bacteria in them. So, and the plants cannot take in nitrogen, but they need it to grow. They need it to live. That's a nutrient for them. And so prairie plants have nodules, and there's nitrogen fixing bacteria, and then they can break that down into, or combine it into other compounds, and then release those into the soil so that plants can take those in. Crops can use it for their nutrient process. these are just some pictures of the types of plants that are known for nitrogen fixing. And we saw, I think, all of those plants at the hospice of Northwest Ohio, Prairie. And we saw these over at Chamberlain Hill as well, and at the zoo. So again, very important. Again, another thing that you don't think about, but these plants can help reduce the temperature of the surrounding area by 5 degrees. So because of the evapotranspiration that takes place when the water goes up into the roots and into the stems and water is released into the air, that causes a cooling effect. And so it's definitely much better for temperature, especially in cities where we have so much concrete and it's just being reflected back, and absorbing all that heat energy. Where and now you can tell when you walk in a prairie, you can see a difference, and you can feel the difference in the air. It also is much better for diversity of arthropods. And again, we talked about that a little bit earlier. You can see, this would be a meadow, and you can see all the difference, the plant richness, the plant diversity, no maintenance, and then you go down to a mowed, highly maintained lawn, and it's mowed bi-weekly, less plant volume, less plant richness, and less diversity. So the more natural it is, the more benefits it will be to the environment. There is a timeline to installing prairies, basically what they have to do. And Kelsey, I'm going to let you talk about this because you are the expert. So the next 2 slides are yours.
So the timeline for a prairie installation, so the first portion of it is going to be the site preparation. So that's us accessing the site, eliminating the existing vegetation, which is typically like the turf grass and any of like the lawn weeds that you usually see, to make the area as sterile as possible. So when we put the native seeds down the following winter, it gives them a better chance of better germination come the following spring. So we will be looking at starting in 2026, or spring of 2026. Typically the first application is going to be towards the end of May, early June, with a couple of fall applications between June and October. And then the prairie seeds we put down in the winter of 2026, either December 2026 or January 2027. So a lot of our native prairie plants, their seeds need that cold, moist conditions of our winters to break down their seed coats to germinate the following spring. Yeah, so we mentioned the winter sowing of the seeds and how that's beneficial. When we do the sowing of the prairie seeds, we typically use a no-till seed drill. So this cuts through the soil, puts the prairie seed in the cover crop down, and then covers it back up. Yeah, so these are just a few photos to kind of show the installation process. So the first photo is pre-existing turf grass. Second photo is after a application has been done. The third photo is the prairie establishing for the first couple of years. So like I mentioned earlier, we typically see black-eyed Susans, purple coneflowers, the species that are quicker to germinate that come up within that first year. For a flat turf grass conversion, we usually see it take about 3 to 5 years to be considered fully established. That last photo, number 4, is what's considered a mature prairie. So even though it doesn't look like there's much going on in the third photo, we do typically see quite a few blooms in that first year immediately, and then each year we see more and more diversity. So a lot of your milkweeds, your like gray-headed coneflowers, some of your goldenrods need an additional year, and then you see them the second and then the third year.
Is there a problem with weeds coming in there?
So usually in the first 3 years is when you see the the heaviest amount of invasive weed load, that's just what's already existing in the seed bank. So once you stop mowing it, and the preparation phase is to help with that, but you'll still get some of that invasive seed that germinates once the area is not mowed anymore. So what Wild Toledo does with the installation, and for the next few years afterwards, to get to 3 years, we would come in and do the invasive weed management. So treating any of the invasives that might pop up, we might do selective mowing. We could also do a controlled burn, and that helps keep the weed load down.
So what kind of maintenance do you have once it's considered mature?
So even once it's considered mature, it's not going to guarantee that there's never going to be an invasive that pops up. With our most common invasives like thistle, teasel, sweet clover, ragweeds, it's just the nature of them that they just kind of blow in. Birds might drop in seeds. It's just after 3 years of keeping up with the invasive management, you see much less of the invasive weed load, but it's still possible that they might blow in and grow. So it's just kind of keeping up with it. But once you get to year 3, the prairie plants have grown and spread, and now they're taking up much more of the area than they were within the first year. So they kind of limit the space that the invasives could grow in.
There's a few slides there.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, the 3 main modes of management that we use is selective mowing. So any of your annual invasive weeds, we typically tend to mow those. As long as we get them before they flower and go to seed, then we can kind of keep them controlled that way. Burning is something that we do. We contract out with a company out of Ann Arbor that does all of our burns for us. We burn in the spring. And it's the most beneficial form of management. All of our prairie plants have kind of co-evolved with fire. So not only does it keep the invasive weed load in check, but when we burn in the spring, it warms up the soil faster, and you get prairie plants that come back like bigger and better in that year.
One thing I want to add, and Chad Carroll back there in the orange, if you don't mind, he works for the Park District, and the Park District does have a prairie right in front of their offices on East Sandusky. East Main Cross, I'm sorry, East Main Cross Street. Chad, could you do this, don't you, the burning?
Yeah, so we have about a quarter mile from where we're talking about putting it in, we have a small half-acre prairie, and we do burn it every 3 to 4 years. It takes 15 minutes to burn. We do burn all the other prairies throughout the parks periodically. So.
And they do notify residents. As Tim said, people get panicky. There's a wildfire, and they don't realize it's a planned burn. So, and I think, do you have fire department there too?
There's a lot of steps you got to go through. I can't just go out and just light it. So you need a burn ball. So I'll prescribe a fire manager. So like I went through a class. I'm certified through the state to do this. I have to notify the Ohio EPA. I have to notify Ohio Department of Forestry. I have to notify local fire departments. I gotta keep everybody updated. There's a small window to do it in. And we have a crew that does it. So our whole staff shows up with spray tanks, a little mini fire truck. So it's pretty planned out. I mean, it's not on the whim.
I'm glad you elaborated on that. One of the advantages of working with Wild Toledo is that once the installation's in for the first 2 years, it takes about 2 years to get it completely installed, and then you can contract with Wild Toledo to maintain it for another 3 years.
Yeah, so in the initial cost, that includes the first year of growth and management, and then I believe that we've quoted out for 2 additional years to get the prairie to that 3-year fully established. But even after that, we can continue to do the maintenance.
So, you can contract, they can do it indefinitely, or another option is that you train city employees or county employees to do that process. And just like Chad, you know, they have a team at the Park District. Obviously, they've learned how to do that, so the county and city employees can learn to do those kinds of things well, as well as if you're using city property to put in the prairie. Okay, I think there's a few more slides there. Oh, I just wanted to show a few beautiful slides. Again, we saw some of those earlier, but if you go to the next slide, that's only year 2, and it looked that beautiful. And then the next slide has a few more pictures. We were shocked, and I think the Toledo Zoo was very pleased.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and the nice thing to point out about the hospice prairie is for this installation, we use the deer-resistant mix. So I know with the site that we're talking about that there are quite a few deer that like to comb through and graze. So the deer-resistant mix is selected or has species that are selected to try to reduce the amount of grazing that deer might do. If they're hungry enough, they're going to eat just about anything, so it's not going to guarantee that they're not going to come through and munch on some of the plants. But it's selected for species that are going to have rougher leaves, more of an aroma to them, like the wild bergamot or your mountain mints that have more of a minty scent to them, and a lot of the milkweeds too, because they have that sticky sap. The deer usually doesn't like to mess with them. So the hospice prairie use that same exact mix, and we're very pleased with the diversity in just 2 years. And that site in particular has had a very low weed load, so very pleased with it.
And it kind of slopes down here. You can see that it's actually sloping down, and I believe there's a stream that runs along there. So again, it's helping with that runoff that would normally occur.
I'm just curious, so with the success of the prairie, is there also research being done on pollinators and how it's supporting pollinators? Because that would be really awesome to know.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, so this site is one of the ones that we do our malaise trapping at, and our butterfly transects and our bee surveys and stuff like that. So I believe that we've been collecting data from the site for 2 years now. So we just have, I think, the numbers of like the insects that have been seen once when we're doing the data collecting, but it hasn't been put into like graphs or charts or anything like that.
And how would we find out information about that data?
So it's currently just an in-house data that we have, but if we were to do it at the site here in Findlay, it's certainly something that we could get out to everybody who would be interested.
Also, because we are collaborating with the University of Findlay and Dr. Ben Dolan, who's one of the science professors, and Lauren Sandu, who was a former our watershed coordinator for the watershed part for us, they can do things like bring their students out, and they'll do bio blitzes where they can just run out there, you know, and start recording the number of different species that they're seeing. The naturalists, they do bird counts twice a year. So any site where there's a prairie, the naturalists can go there and start doing their bird counts. Katie Ware over here, and I did introduce Katie, but she is the executive director of the West Central Ohio Land Conservancy. And Katie's had experience with zoos as well. She actually worked with Wild Toledo. Do you want to add anything there?
No, I think Jane, you touched on a couple of surveying opportunities, but I think that's what makes installing a prairie in the city of Findlay so special is those really close collaborations and that network that the wildlife and nature people have in the city of Findlay with the University of Findlay, Bluffton University. I'm with Bowling Green State University right now, so there's lots of opportunities for education, sharing that data, finding out different ways to do some more different surveying and supporting students, and of course, like Jane also alluded to as well, having some younger classes and younger schools coming out that are just as capable of doing some surveying as well. So there are so many awesome cross-collaborative education opportunities with that kind of data collection.
We even want to, from the National Park Service, I think, they have these prairie trunks that you can order and get them in your classroom. So I'm going to sign up and have one delivered to me. And then I'm going to see what's in the kits, in the trunk, and then we're going to duplicate that. So that's one of the reasons I want to do some grant funding is so that we can buy the things to put in the trunk so then that the teachers can use them in their classrooms. And there's so many videos and stuff, even about Ohio Prairies that you can show your students. So we'll have a list of all the different, I'm collecting tons of activities that teachers can do in their classrooms too. I love doing that kind of thing. That's what I love doing with my kiddos in school. So we're going to have lots of resources for teachers to use. And then I'm going to give Chad Carroll a little chance to, I forgot to do this earlier, because Chad's wife, Stevie, is starting her own nursery, native plant nursery. You want to just tell us what the name of it is?
Yeah, so Native Pathways Nursery, she just started this year. It's southern Hancock County, so just south of Arlington. We don't have the 500 species that Toledo has, but we have 50 species of native prairie plants that are available for sale. So
Is that the old Star Farm?
It's called Native
bought all this
Pathways
stuff.
Nursery. Native Pathways.
And Chad, you can see your inventory on Facebook, can't you?
Yeah, she does all her business through Facebook, so that's the best way to contact her. We just had the sale last weekend, so it's kind of running low, but next year it'll be good.
Yes.
I had a question. So I attended a presentation a couple of years ago, and I think Tim was here, as was Pete, and they talked about pocket prairies, and so I have one now, and I keep making it bigger. But I'm trying to decide, and I missed the very beginning of this, what are we trying to identify places in Findlay that we think would be candidates to be prairies? It looks like the Parks Department has some pocket prairie places. I was just at River Bend. I mean, what do you want from me? Are you just trying to provide more information? Is there a plan for Wild Toledo to do specific areas in Findlay? I live in the city, and I have my little postage stamp sized yard with my tiny little things, and then there's an easement and a knoll behind me with all of those invasive pear trees and ground veg and all kinds of, and I'm thinking, we need to put a prairie back here. But how do you go about that? Do you just and I couldn't do it myself, but it just seems like there's that easement with all the pear trees and other places with all that crap everywhere. I'm thinking, this would be a perfect place for a group, I don't know what group, to try to make some inroads and make it better. But I'm not sure what I'm not sure what other than education and promoting this, because I mean I've been digging in a little bit still, fledgling, just, and so I've been watching Doug Tallamy, and he wants everybody to have oak trees and native plants, and so that, and he's an entomologist, so he can tell you about all the insects and what's happened in the 10-acre property that he has in Delaware, Pennsylvania, and what huge changes have been made there. So what are we trying to do this evening?
Okay, well, Tim's right behind you.
Okay.
And we will come to that in our presentation too, but go ahead, Tim.
Well, all this seems like it's just happened in the last couple of months. It's actually been ongoing for a couple of years. When all the flood mitigation work was started, and they realized this is probably going to happen, there's going to be hundreds of acres all over Hancock County, the whole Lye Creek area up in Eagle Township, areas along Findlay, Blanchard River, other places even extending into Ottawa and Putnam County. And we can't afford to mow hundreds of acres of grass.
Right.
We had to come up with an economical solution, of which all the other benefits are wonderful, but the idea is we need a cover crop on all these areas which are likely to flood. So you get some good people like Steve Wilson. He's a retired county engineer, but he's also the flood coordinator, flood mitigation coordinator for all this area with Maumee Conservancy District. And even the mayor, Christina, wants to see some of these things happen.
Right.
Where people can see them, okay? So they're not gonna look like a weed patch. They're gonna look like a wildflower meadow. And as far as how to install them, stay tuned for more Master Gardener workshops on how to plant prairies. I mean, they already had a couple of them. Kelsey just told us here a few minutes ago how to put bigger ones in. And you went to one where Pete told us how to put ones in.
Right.
Now the one in his backyard is doing great. So I would just stay tuned,
Okay.
The big thing is get good plants, good seeds, and go to work.
Yeah, because I've planted I keep hearing this seed mix, and I've not seen a seed mix. I keep buying,
Well, Kelsey will sell it to you.
Okay.
But go back, Mark, to the slide that has the butterfly and the bees, the round circles with butterflies and bees. Go all the way back, it's almost right to the beginning. Because there's a website that you can go to, and yes, this site. If you go to the Bee and Butterfly Fund, I'm sorry, Fund, you go to that website, they will work with you to install prairies, and they will provide the seeds for it, a certain mix of seeds that they find very successful. You can access their experts, they'll guide you through the process. And it's like everything you would want to know. And you have to have, well, here's the only, if I recall, and it's in my notes, but I don't know if the notes page is up on there. I think it's under 25 acres. So they'll provide seed for anything under 25 acres. So if you have a small plot that's backyard, you can contact them. They have their contact information on their website, and they will walk you through the process. So that's where I got this information from.
Does the city of Findlay have regulations about, you have to keep your grass mowed to 6 inches, so are the city council going to have to make some ordinances to allow people to have prairies in town?
Yes, that is in the works. I know for city-owned property that there will be some legislation that will have to be enacted. I don't know about individual prairies, but that's a good question, and I will talk to the mayor about people having prairies in their
There's
yard.
already a lot of local prairies, and there's a difference between a prairie and a weed patch. And sometimes only an attorney can figure that out.
And I think it's only front yards that, that's, and not backyards.
Well, and that's where education comes in, and that's part of what the Watershed Partnership would do. Because I'll be honest, people will see in the autumn, it's going to look, it looks like weeds. Sorry, I mean it is, but everything's brown in the fall, so it's not just the prairies. But people, it takes time for it to grow in the spring, and until then, people go like, hey, look at that. But then when it blooms, they're like breathless, it takes your breath away, they're so beautiful. So it will take a lot of education for us with different organizations, yes.
I have a question, and I don't live in the city, but I have reed canary grass that comes in with the water, the flood water from the river. What do you do with that?
It would probably need to be treated.
You just kill it off?
Yeah, and I don't know if, you would have to maybe check a couple different herbicide labels. I think we typically use glyphosate. And
What's it called?
Glyphosate.
Glyphosate.
Formerly called Roundup.
Yes.
Yeah, Roundup. But it's a non-selective herbicide, so you just want to make sure that it would work on that.
Well, where the reed canary is, there's nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a solid crop.
Yeah, and it might take like a bit of time and multiple treatments to knock it out.
Is this right next to a waterway?
Got about 40 acres along the river,
Wow.
and it's all in warm season grass, I've got two problems. I've got the main gas line for Finley running underneath the property so you can't burn it. And then when I was trying to establish the warm season grass areas, it floods. So every flood brought up reed canary grass seed, locust trees, autumn olive or Russian olive, whatever you call it. All those good things.
There is a glyphosate product you can use around water. They use it at the country club for controlling weeds out there along the Blanchard.
And is that safe, because isn't Roundup carcinogenic?
If you take showers in it.
Well, but it's going into
But if
the
it's-
river, it's going into the water supply.
This will never get to the river.
No. And it's only in the environment for 2 weeks.
There have been studies showing it's not as dangerous as popular culture believes it is.
Anytime we're using any sort of herbicide, it's always by the label.
Yep.
We're very mindful of wind conditions, wind direction, wind speed, to make sure that there's no drift. We're mindful, we always flag the areas if we're spraying a turf grass section, and making sure that nobody's entering the area within the 24 hours of when we've sprayed it. After that, it is safe to re-enter the area.
Thank you for answering those questions. Oh, so you asked what are the next steps? Well, again, the team that we're working with, we will apply for grants. I'm in the process of running 2 grants, one to Freshwater Futures. I'm personally a member of our Watershed Partnership Board. We are members of Freshwater Futures. And so once you're a member, you can apply for grants. So I've got a grant that's almost done to send to them, September 30th. We're also applying for a PepsiCo grant to help with the installation. And then Phil Martin, who was our former watershed coordinator, he's very talented at writing state and federal grants. So we'll be looking at some 319 grants. And these kind of projects fit perfect with 319 grants, and you can get larger amounts of money. My grants that I'm writing, little grants, $5,000 each. But
They don't want you to burn anywhere near that.
the 319s, you're talking hundreds of thousands for the projects.
Who's the grant funder?
And a rush off.
319 grants?
Ohio
It's-
EPA.
Jim?
319 is
Too old for that, right?
Yes.
It's 319.
Yeah, they're called 319, the Environmental Protection Agency grants. And basically, you want to be part of an organization to do that, like a nonprofit.
I was just gonna ask, I mean, you got some land that's just in grass. Is there some grants available for that, just as a from public funded areas, private? You just kinda-
Tim, do you know the question
For
was?
private landowners, I don't believe I know what that is.
That might be harder because, except that you do have the free seeds from the bee and pollinator group. We hope to get the team together now that things are kind of getting firmed up. We kind of have a site in place, but there's a lot of stuff that's got to happen before we have permission to use certain sites. And once we do get official permission, then we'll get our team together and we'll plan outreach presentations to different groups in Findlay. We are working, as I said earlier, a marketing company to market the Prairie project and develop signs for the different sites that we hope to install at these places, and website updates, so forth. Definitely one of the Freshwater Futures grant is for presentations, flyers, so that Prairie trunk that I want to develop, that could be part of the Freshwater Futures grant. And then just getting out there and talking to people and educating the community, because we do know that there are going to be people that may not want one close to their home. It's going to happen, and that's the beauty of working with Wild Toledo, because if it's in a residential area, there are plans to put trees to screen people's view if they don't want to look at the prairie. We can install trees to kind of screen that. area. Also, along the perimeter of the Prairie area, they'll put the most beautiful plants along the perimeter so that when people drive by, they go, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And they also do allow area where there will be a little mowing along the edges so that it's not weedy all the way out to the street. And also you have to have view for cars as well so they can see to exit and enter areas. Is that it? Okay. Basically, we can grow a stronger community by working together on a project like this. I think we can make a difference. Anybody who's interested, we can make a difference we can improve water, the soil, all the different wildlife. And because I'm an educator, and because teachers have to teach Ohio science standards, they can use the Prairie properties to teach their students the standards. And the thing of it is, when kids get their hands in the soil, and when they're looking, I used to love to peel the epidermis off of these and look at it underneath a microscope, or look at an Elodea plant, water plant, and you can see the mitochondria in a microscope. They love learning about nature, and the best way to do it is to get out there and explore it. Teaching science is the best job in the world. You really get to have kids get excited about it. I've never had a kid that says, I don't want to go out in the land lab, Mrs. McCleary. Oh no, they want to be out there now, and they want to spend more time out there. And that Chamberlain Hill School, the kids were just shocked that they could actually help. We can actually help put these in the ground. They were so excited. Jen Sewerman, who's a special ed teacher at Chamberlain Hill, said the impact it's had on their students has been amazing. And they know their science now. So when they take that science test and they have to answer questions about photosynthesis and food chains are really big in the science standards. They'll know from personal experience. We can make this a better community together. I hope you are interested. If you signed in and you want more information, I can send it to you. And this information that I wrote down today that people had, questions they had, I'll send that out if you're interested. I don't go out, if your email's there, I'm not going to call you, I'm not going to email you and say, give us money. That's not what we do. We just want to educate people. If you have questions, probably the best way would be to use the coordinator email, which would be coordinator@blanchardriver.org. Coordinator@blanchardriver.org. Right now, we do not have an employee, so I'm kind of filling in until we hire one, which hopefully will be soon. And when we get that employee, all the emails will go to that address. And I think there might be one more slide. Again, if you want to volunteer, you can mark on that sheet if you really want to get involved and do more. Yep, and right there's the coordinator email. And we're glad to get hold of you. And things aren't going to happen really quick, but we could. I'm in the process of reaching out to Findlay City Schools to see if they would like volunteers to help maintain the school properties, the school prairies. So if they need some help pulling invasive plants or doing a bio-blitz or something like that, we can have volunteers help with those kinds of things. And then one more slide, and I think that's just the resources. Those are the resources that I use to do my research. So, any questions? Yes.
I have two, actually. How small is a pocket prairie? I've never heard about prairie pockets or whatever. That's one question. And then the other one is, can you have a prairie and vegetables in the same plot?
Well, that would be Chelsea, or Kelsey. I didn't want to call you Chelsea. Kelsey, you want to address that?
Well, I think as far as the pocket prairie, I think a prairie could be really any size that you have available. And it's not just necessarily about like putting in a prairie. Even if you have just like a couple of garden beds around your house, and you just start with like a few natives and just kind of try to get those into any open space that you have in any of your beds. I mean, any little bit helps. But I think a prairie could be really any size that you have available. And then, I'm sorry, what was your other question? Oh, about the...
And tomatoes or vegetables with, in a prairie?
Yes.
I don't see why not.
Yeah,
I got a 2-acre prairie right next to my garden.
Yeah,
There's no issue.
I grow stuff in with my garden all the time,
Okay.
so. Flowers, zinnias.
My husband had taken, he had a butterfly mix packet and a wildflower mix packet, and he put those in the garden. And after a couple years, I mean, it was just filled with all these flowers and things in the spring, and I was like, what in the world? What am I
Sounds like
doing
you got your
here?
pocket prairie.
Okay.
That's your prairie.
You already have a pocket prairie and you know it. Which makes me think, and I can't believe I didn't put the site in there, right where we are right now.
Yeah.
There's pocket prairies right out in front. When you walked in the front door, alongside both sides of the sidewalk, there's little pocket prairies. And then there's another one in the back of the building by the garage that goes underneath the building. So if you're interested, take a look at what's out there, go around back and look at the little prairie back there. They have everything labeled so you can see what they will grow. It'll be a little while before we'll see, another year or two before you get to see the brilliant flowers. But who helped with that, Tim? Was that the
It
naturalist?
was Master Gardeners, University of Findlay students, and library
Okay.
employees.
So a lot of involvement, making sure that we get a nice blend of wildflower plants and native plants. So, any other questions? Yes.
Jane, apparently you have some idea of where you're talking about doing these.
Can I say?
Yeah.
Not at the moment, because it has to be approved. And so we do have a site in mind, but it is city-owned property, but city council has to approve it, and that has to go before the board. So we're hoping, before council, so we're hoping by the beginning of October, we will get official approval to do that. But at a recent event that Watershed Partnership hosted last Wednesday, as a matter of fact, Commissioner Bechtel approached us, and he is also interested in urban prairies. So as soon as I get a little bit more information, I'm going to give him a phone call. I think they'll really want to do prairies in the county because of the exorbitant cost of maintaining, mowing the land. They just don't want to spend that money anymore. So I'm confident that there will be sites out around Hancock County, any county-owned property that's flood mitigation will probably have a good chance of becoming an urban prairie. But the site we have in mind right now, I really can't say until I get approval from the mayor and the city council.
Well, I just want to say, I hope when they promote adding these prairies that, of course, it is cost savings, but it's also ecologically hugely significant for our natural world to put these things in.
Absolutely.
And so to also provide that information, I would assume it would be
Oh,
coupled
absolutely.
with that, but
We would have signage and educational material that people, and I will have to say this too, Mayor Mirren, I've had an opportunity to work with her quite a bit. She is very motivated to support environmental projects. Anything that she can do, she's looking for funding to promote the Urban Prairie Project. So she cares about the environment, and it's not just to save money. It's to make our community healthier, our water cleaner, our air, cleaner as well, because plants can purify the air as well as the water. So she definitely has a environmentalist take on what's good for the community and the health of the community. We have to keep the pollutants out of the water. I think it was like 65% of the communities get their water, citizens in the watershed, get their water from the Blanchard River, Bluffton, Ottawa. So I have a feeling this project is going to grow, it's going to expand to Bluffton. Ottawa will be interested, so we're definitely going to do whatever we can to get these projects started. So I'm very excited about it. I hope you are too. Thank you for coming tonight and learning a little bit more about prairies. So.